Okay, sorry. So now I'm recording. So like I was saying, you have the link to the slides in the chat or in the main presentation from earlier today that you saw with the counselors and administrators. There's a link to all the departments' slideshows for those of us who have one. Now, I see one question I see several questions. So if you don't mind, I'll just answer from here, and then anybody could chime in if their question doesn't get answered or they don't see the answer in the slideshow. The question is, if a child has taken Spanish in middle school, can they take French in high school? Absolutely. I'll tell you something. We encourage students to stick with the same language. For someone who wants to be very competitive for colleges or programs after high school, it really is good to try to stick with the same language up to the highest level that we offer. So if you know that your child is looking to go to a very competitive college, then I would keep that in mind. If we offer AP level and they have already taken level 2 in middle school, they should be taking 3, 4, 5 AP at Walter Johnson. Um, However, and to answer your question, yes, at any time they can change languages, but keep in mind to meet the graduation requirement, they have to have 2 years of the same language. That could be 2 years in middle school or 2 years plus in high school. So as long as they've taken 2 years, that's the bare minimum. Obviously, we want to see them taking a lot more than 2 years. Um, So to answer that question, yes, they can take more than one language. Now, speaking of taking more than one language, if students are interested in taking more than one language at a time, we have a special program called LEAD. And for those of you who have the slides, starting on page 6 of the slides, it talks about the LEAD program and what the requirements are for that. So in the LEAD program, students are focusing on taking more than one world language, and one of them has to be up to the highest level. And then there are other AP requirements that go along with that, and that's something that they would put on their resume essentially. And then at graduation, they would have a special designation in the graduation program for LEAD. The next question I see, my child took French for several years living abroad. They skipped French in 8th grade. Yes, can they take a placement test? So that's another thing. We have a placement test for all of our languages, ex except for Latin. Latin, more or less, you meet with the Latin teacher if you need placement. But we have a placement test for the other languages. It is a written test. Um, and in cases where we need more information, we might ask to speak with the student one-on-one. So yes, there are placement tests. So if a student feels like they might not need to go in order of the levels the way they come, maybe they think they could skip to a higher level, or they just have no idea. They've never taken a language class before, but maybe they speak a second language at home. To, to find the right fit, we need to give them a placement test, which could be done when they get to WJ, like this summer. They could come in to WJ and take the test with their counselor or with some other adult in the building. Or if they want to get a head start on that so that their schedule is set already, they are welcome to contact me and I can meet with them to give them the test. It needs to be in person though, under supervision. And I don't see another question in the chat. So anybody who wants to either unmute and ask a question or put more questions in the chat, um, I'm happy to answer questions, or I could tell you about something else, such as the Seal of Biliteracy. A lot of people ask about the Seal of Biliteracy exam because this is the season for that. That is an exam. Oh, more people are coming. That's an exam that we give twice a year. It's offered to seniors and juniors only. And that is something for students who are bilingual. It doesn't have to be that they're bilingual in a language that we offer at WJ. It can be a language that is their native or heritage language that they speak at home. The test, depending on which language it is, would test all four areas: speaking, listening, reading, writing. And for seniors, we offer that for free. And then for juniors, they pay $21 to take the test. If a senior takes the test and doesn't pass the first time, then depending on their score, if it's close enough, they would be offered a retake and they would pay like $11 for that. I encourage juniors. uh, We say that if it's your heritage language and you feel that you're bilingual, then you sign up, you register for the test. If you are learning the language as your second language at Walter Johnson or wherever else you might have learned it, uh, we encourage people who are in level 4 and above to take the seal of biliteracy. There's nothing to lose by taking it, and there's a lot to gain because one, it tells you your proficiency level. So you'll get a score, the students will get a score at the end that tells them specifically from the we use a company called Avant. They'll tell the students in a written report what their proficiency level is. Um, Sorry, more people are coming. So, so that's something just to keep in mind. You don't have to be taking a world language again to take the Seal of Biliteracy test. And I put information about that in the slides. It's offered pretty much in any language you can think of. If your native language uh, is if you don't see it on the list, just you contact me and I'll talk to the central office and they'll find us a test for your student. Okay, I think I see a new question. Oh, okay, this is a good question. Okay, I see a question that says that someone's student took world language for the first 2 years of middle school, then they stopped taking, and now they want to know like what is next. So if you've taken a world language, if students have taken a world language anywhere, they never lose those languages when they come to WJ. That's always going to be there. So they still have their credits for those years, and then we encourage them to, obviously we would rather they not take a break, but if they do take a break, we just encourage them to get right back to it. Sign up for the next level. Some students might feel like, oh gosh, but I don't know if I'll remember. And that's fine. In that case, I would suggest they contact us, especially over the summer, because that's a good time. They have some time on their hands. We could give them some refresher materials from the old levels so they could feel a little bit more prepared going in. Because we don't want them repeating a level that they've already shown that they have mastered in the past. So we'd encourage them to go to the next level. And if they feel like they need a little refresher, they would contact me or the teacher or any of the teachers of that language. I see a question. Do you have a class for native speakers? And is that the AP class? That is a great question. So we do have a lot of native speakers of different languages at WJ. We offer AP classes in French, Spanish, Chinese, and Latin right now. Um, we don't have a special class that's designated only for native speakers. So our native speakers are mixed in with any other student who wants to take that language and is at that level. Far as having students sign up for their native language, it's up to the students, but if your student is very proficient in their native language, the courses that we're offering are really not designed for native speakers. So we would like the native speakers to learn something new, learn a third language, learn another language that they're not familiar with. But if they feel like, well, they really need to work on the reading or the writing or speaking of their heritage or native language, then they are still welcome in our classes, of course. But just to know that someone at a high level may feel like they're out of place because remember, going to be students there who've never spoken the language in a native setting. They've only learned it in a school setting, 45 minutes a day while we're in school. But if that's the case, if you weren't here for the part about the placement tests, we offer a placement test so that we would know where to put your student. Because we obviously don't want a native speaker starting in level 1, because that in most cases would not be necessary, right? They would be wasting their time. So we don't normally start a ninth grader in an AP class. So if they test into that, then obviously it would be a consideration. But we do want to just keep in mind the maturity level and how hard it might be for them to navigate their whole schedule with an advanced placement language class right off the bat. But it's not out of the question. Does anyone have? I don't see another question in the chat. Or tell me if I missed something. Is it? Oh, I did miss something. Is it possible to repeat Spanish 1 if you already finished your Spanish credit? So if someone were to do that, I presume the reason would be to improve their grade. And yes, that is allowed. We don't encourage that because I don't know, I feel like it might be very boring for the student to go through a whole nother year of a language that they've already done the work for. But I mean, we do allow it, and there are kids who do that. Maybe especially if they feel like, well, maybe when they took it, I don't know, maybe they missed a lot for whatever reason and they really feel like they need to get a better base, then yes, they could go back and repeat it, but they wouldn't get new credit for it, right? They would just, if they got a better grade, they'd be able to replace the grade. That would, I think, be the the benefit of it if someone were to do that. Have any other questions?
Yes, I'm sorry. I have a question. If my son's been taking Spanish since sixth grade,
Uh-huh.
how do you know he is ready to go from Spanish to Spanish for native speaker? Like how?
So we don't offer, some schools do offer a specific class designed for native speakers. At Walter Johnson, we don't offer that class, Spanish for Spanish speakers. So if your son, is he in level 3 right now, Spanish 3 or Spanish 2?
I think he's in Spanish too. I don't know how, because he took Spanish sixth grade and then Spanish 1, seventh grade and then Spanish 2, eighth grade.
Oh, yeah, that's likely the trajectory that he took. Because in the middle school, they often divide level 1 into 2 years, and then level 2 is 8th grade. And so he would come to WJ and take level 3. Now, if he felt like, or you felt like, maybe that's not the right level, he could maybe be higher than that, but they weren't offering that at the middle school level, that's when we would want him to take a placement test to see, could he skip level 3 and go to a higher level, or is level 3 fine? We don't need to give him a placement test for him to be allowed to go to level 3, because that's just the natural progression. But if he felt like, this has always been too easy, but this is all they offered, then we'd want to give him a placement test to see, hey, maybe he can do more, and then he can get to his AP level earlier and then start another language if he wants.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions for me?
Hello.
Hi.
So I'm a student, but I couldn't make it to the real thing.
Uh-huh.
Or so I'm here just with my dad, and so I was like born and raised in Nicaragua until like I was like 10.
Uh-huh.
So basically I'm pretty fluent in speaking Spanish, but like lately with all these like math, English classes, you kind of lose track of the language and you're always like
Okay.
just seeing, reading English. So I was wondering if like, uh, if I, when already knowing like Spanish, a big chunk of Spanish, will I just like go into a world uh language course, in this case Spanish, because I want to like reinforce
Yeah.
those the
Yeah,
Spanish. So do
absolutely.
I take a placement test to see if I will be like uh put
Yeah.
into like a higher level of Spanish, or is it just like
Yeah, that's exactly what you would do. So,
oh,
especially for students in your position where you have background knowledge of a language, a second language that we offer, we don't want you to just start at the beginning because that's probably not necessary for you. We want to make sure that we put you in a level appropriate for what you know so that you can get to the highest level possible in the shortest amount of time, because no need to review the alphabet and numbers since you would probably already know that. So yes, we'd give you a placement test. And I was saying, it was probably earlier before you came, I was saying that you could take a placement test anytime, and you probably want to do it earlier than later if you want to make sure you get your schedule set. You don't necessarily want to wait until the first day of school next year, because then our language classes get full and maybe the one you need is no longer available. So if you have a chance to talk to your counselor before the end of the school year or even over the summer, you would come into WJ and we'd give you the placement test in person. It's a written test. And then we would figure out what language or which level is the right one for you.
so I can just like go up to like my counselor and just say like
Yeah,
I want to take the placement test so I can be put into like some level of Spanish next year, right?
exactly.
I
And
have
when,
3 electives, right? Uh,
um, do you, are you asking if you're allowed to take 3 electives next year in ninth grade?
so I choose the required courses. So that's math, history, and like
Science, English.
science, English, yeah, normal ones, and then like you choose 3 other ones, right?
Uh-huh.
So, so that's what you choose, right? So I'm like thinking
Yeah,
concert band, and then Spanish, and
yeah.
then like some kind of art
So-
or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
some type of art or PE or health, something like that. Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
you're welcome. Oh, I think there's a new message. Hold on. Oh, the question is, who do we contact for a placement test? Uh, so since you're still in middle school, I think what the best thing probably is to contact your child's counselor or their world language teacher if they're already in a class. If they're not already in a world language class, then yes, contact their counselor. And I'll contact the world languages. Um, I think they're called content specialists in middle school. I can contact both of the one at Tilden and the one at North Bethesda, and give them a copy of our placement test so that if people want to do that now, even before they register, we could tell them, if this, I'm not sure when your deadline, does someone know when the deadline for registration is for you all? As I would think, as long as it's not like tomorrow, if there were enough time, we could even get the results back in time for you to know which language level to sign up for.
Yes, hi. This is what I wanted to ask you. They mentioned something like I think February 12th as a deadline for registration. So
Oh, okay,
Yes,
that gives
so-
us a lot of time.
okay, so the structure of the placement test, does it have a speaking component, listening component?
No, it's really it's more basic than that. It's all writing.
Mhm.
Um, if we are unsure, may, just based on the writing, then it doesn't happen that often, but we do sometimes ask to speak with the student in
Right.
person. Or
Uh,
not necessarily in person, just speak with the student, like, by Zoom, phone call, if there was a question about, not sure which level.
So is that like some kind of a free form writing or reading comprehension?
It's a free form writing. There
Uh-huh.
are 4 prompts
Uh-huh.
that kind of are steering the students to use certain
Yes,
structures.
structures, vocabulary.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then we have somebody from each of the languages because I only speak Spanish as my second language, so I would look at the Spanish test or placement test with other Spanish teachers to say, okay, what do you think? I think this, or do you agree? And then there's always, room for change if the student ends up in a level where they feel like, maybe this is too hard, or,
Right.
well, this is still too easy for me.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I see a question in the chat. Is ASL only a 1-year course of study, or are there multiple levels? So I'm just gonna put in the chat again for any new people, in case you didn't see this already in the main slides from the earlier presentation. But I just put in the chat I don't know if my slides are showing on the screen. I was having a problem with that. But I put the link there so that you can see them on your own. And in those slides, it tells all the languages that we offer. So on page 3 is slide 3 is essentially the same list that your student would see when they go to register. Those are all the courses they can choose from. ASL, we offer right now ASL 1 and 2, but you will not see it on your child's registration card because it's not open to 9th grade students. Students can only start taking, as of now, students can only start taking ASL as 10th graders and above. And for the first time, sorry, oh, dog. Trixie, we're offering level 3 ASL to students who have already completed up to level 2 at WJ or somewhere else. Sorry, let me just let her out of the room 1 second. Trixie. Oh. Okay, sorry. Okay, so that was the ASL question. I'm not sure if I'm missing any other questions, or if somebody has a question, you're welcome to put it in the chat or unmute yourself, and I'm happy to answer more questions. Anybody have any questions for me? Oh, thank you. You're welcome. And again, if you have any other questions, something comes up, you're welcome to email me. And my information is in the slideshow. Oh, good question. All right. So how would we know what level of specific language my son must apply? So first, we would start off with what language he's interested in taking. Do you know what language he wants to sign up for?
Yes, Spanish, please.
Okay. So he wants to sign up for Spanish, but he doesn't know what level to choose.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have a placement test that we give to students who either haven't taken a class before or maybe they took a class, but they feel like, oh, that was not the right level, but they really weren't offering the level that I need. Because I know in middle school, the choices are limited to levels 1 and 2. And does your middle school offer 3? Maybe not. But
No.
okay, so we have a placement test, and what we could do is we could share the placement test with his counselor if he wants to take that before he needs to sign up. He could take the placement test with his counselor. She emails us the test once he finishes, because he takes it, the way it works is it's under supervision. So somebody at his school would, sit with him while he takes the test. And the test it's only a written test, and it has 4 prompts that kind of lead the students to use certain vocabulary and structures. And based off of what he writes there, I would look at it, and possibly other Spanish teachers at WJ would look at it and say, okay, this student looks like he should take whatever level 3, level 4. And then that way he could put that right onto his schedule card. And then he'd be set, and he wouldn't have to wait until, he gets to WJ to find out, oh shoot, he signed up for level 1, but that was way too easy. And then his whole schedule gets messed up. So the earlier we can get it done, the better for him.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. If there's other questions, I hope I'm not missing anybody's questions in the chat. I'm scrolling through. You can put them in the chat or unmute. I think it just says, if a child has taken 3 years at North Bethesda, does it complete the high school requirement? I don't know if this person is actually still in the room, but yes, if anyone else had the same question, yes. If students have completed two years, 2 different levels of the same language, it has to be the same language, then they fulfill the high school requirement, as long as they pass the courses, of course. So if they've taken 2 years of the same language, whether it be in middle school or high school, they meet the requirement. But of course, that's the basic requirement. We want them to keep taking the language, and we want them to keep taking the same language to the highest level that we offer.
And hi, thank you, Amanda.
Hi.
And that's my question. At least it seems that my daughter knew that she should be continue French. We have a little of a situation in which her dad is first language is French, my first language is Portuguese.
Okay.
She does speak both, but of course she's been taking French, and she needs accommodation for that. So her grades are not the best grades because she does need the accommodation, given, she needs accommodation
Yeah.
in all the classes. So, and she seems to, my question is, do you encourage, and it seems, for instance, because she has the French and do we encourage really for her to continue with the French, or she seems to be interested in learning more the Spanish because she hasn't, even though she can understand given the languages she already has,
Right.
but you would recommend that she doesn't start a next language, but then continue with the English. Is that your recommendation for consistency?
So in the best case scenario, she would take them both. She would continue with French and take that to the highest level. But if she really likes languages and she has room in her schedule, and maybe it's not the first year, maybe she doesn't have room next year to take 2 languages, so maybe she just continues with French next year, but then in 10th grade, then she adds on Spanish. Or if she's still interested in Spanish or whatever other language she's interested in. And I was talking about this earlier. If you have the slideshow that I made, do you have that?
I don't. I was in another session and I saw I had 15 more minutes, so I jumped here at the end.
Oh,
So I
that's okay.
apologize for arriving late.
No, that's totally fine. People just are jumping in and out with questions. I just put it back into the chat, the link. That has information about a special program we have at WJ called LEAD, and it stands for Linguistic Excellence and Discovery. And that's a voluntary program for students who are really interested in languages. And they work with our Italian teacher. She's the supervisor of the program, and they take certain courses to get a certificate for LEAD. And that's something that would show up on the high school at graduation, the graduation program. There would be a special designation saying that they were in the LEAD program. They have to make a special presentation when they're seniors. And that requires them to take one language all the way to AP level, and then another language to, I think it's at least 2 years of another language. So that might be something she's interested in.
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't know about that. And if I may, I know other people are here, but if I may just follow up on that question in terms of, because in the sample schedule they offered, they were talking about, they suggest children to take either the world language, tech, AP, physical education, or so. If she chose to, she could. So then, she would take 2 languages instead of either, which ones she could take 2 languages instead of, I don't know, tech, for instance, or how
So
does that work?
There's probably so some people might take tech to replace a language. Of course, we don't recommend that in the world languages department. We want you to take world language, and especially students who are trying to be very competitive for after high school. The best case scenario is to show people that you stuck with something, right? You took it to the highest level. You didn't just, do the lower levels and say, you know what, I'm done. That was enough. I got my requirement. No, we want students to just keep going up to the highest level. So there's probably, I don't know the requirements for all of the other departments, but there may be some tech credit you need in addition to a world language, or I'm not sure. But
That's
you
okay.
certainly
I was just a bit confused because looks like in the recommendation, so I was wondering how she could take 2 world languages if she has other requirements to
right.
fulfill. But
That's why I was
of course, I
thinking.
always would choose a language instead of arts. No detriment to
Well, I
arts,
love
but like,
arts too. I wouldn't replace the arts. But
yes.
certainly there's space for arts and language. I don't think in 9th grade there would be room in the schedule to take 2 world language classes because of the other elective requirements that she might need. But maybe after 9th grade, she could start fitting in another language.
Thank you.
You're welcome. For anyone just joining us, you're welcome to unmute and ask a question or put a question in the chat. I'm scrolling through. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can kind of hear you.
Not really.
If you want, you could put the question in the chat. Oh, I see you answered
My
a question
earbuds.
that I
Can you hear
had.
me now?
Yes, better, much better.
Okay. So I put a note in the chat that students do need that 1 tech credit. In theory, they could take 2 world languages their first year. The downside to that is then they're pushing off of graduation requirements. So for example, if they don't take PE their first year, let's say they do 2 world languages instead, they'll still have to make up that PE credit. And most students like to get the graduation requirements out of the way first. Those classes are primarily filled with underclassmen. So, they don't necessarily want to take it as an upperclassman, but there's certainly room as they progress to have those 2 world languages.
Okay, that's good to know. So, but they do need a tech credit regardless.
Yep.
Okay. I knew that there must be something from tech. I wasn't, but selfishly, I was trying to get more people
Yes,
in our
you
world
put that
language
plug
department.
in. Yeah.
I think this is a new question. My daughter's in French 2B now, but would rather not continue. She's interested in ASL. Should she not take a language? Okay, so I think that and you must know this because it sounds like you knew that in 9th grade, they cannot sign up for ASL. So yes, we'd love to have her in ASL, but yes, starting in 10th grade. However, I would discourage her from taking a year off of language. If she started French and maybe she's not thrilled about it right now, but her experience at WJ in French 3 could be totally different. And she may really enjoy it. So if I were I would encourage her to sign up for French 3 and see how she likes it. Because you might not have been here when we were talking about this, but the idea is that we want to encourage students to keep taking a language to the highest level possible. And then, like Miss Samuels was saying, then later in 10th grade, she could add another language. And if that's ASL, great. So she would just keep going with both of those.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And again, anyone who's just joining, if you want to unmute and ask a question or put a question in the chat, I'm monitoring the chat to see if there are any new questions.
Hi, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so my son placed into Spanish 2 in 6th and then did Spanish 3 in 7th grade. And then in 8th grade now, he's not taking anything because we didn't want him going to Walter Johnson this year. So this year doesn't have any Spanish. But would like to continue. So in 9th grade, that means he'll be going into, I guess, Spanish 4.
Correct.
After having skipped a whole year of Spanish. I don't know if you would recommend him redoing Spanish 3 or.
So that's a good question. And other people have asked the same question. So yeah, ideally we don't want students skipping a year, but in his case, he didn't really have a choice because he was at a higher level than what they were offering at the school. But we wouldn't want him to repeat a whole level that he's already taken.
Yeah.
And likely he would hear similar information, and that might be discouraging to him, and then he might not want to continue going to higher levels. So what I would recommend is contacting his French 4 teacher, and we'll know who that is soon, or we could just contact the current French 4 teacher.
Spanish,
Or you said Spanish?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
I don't know where I got
That's
French.
fine.
The Spanish 4 teachers, and just ask, or even 3, to ask for a refresher. Like, okay, maybe this level 3 teacher sends him, or we point you in the direction with links to, okay, here are all the units that were studied in level 3. Just browse back through those, and here's a list of the grammatical structures that you should have been familiar with in level 3. And then he has the whole summer to just kind of look it over.
Okay.
And then feel more prepared.
Self-refresher over the summer and then.
Yeah. And the level, at every level at the beginning of the year, there's, you know, a review kind of seeing where people are because we're getting kids from all different places at all different
Yeah.
levels, a mix of, you know, heritage speakers, people who are taking for the, you know,
Mhm.
in level 4, there will be people who've only ever studied language at Walter Johnson or in school, you know, so there's going to be a variety of levels. So,
Right.
yeah, I think if he just brushes up over the summer,
Yeah.
that would be the best.
Sure. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Anyone else have a question? I'm just scrolling through the chat to see if anybody might have put a question that I didn't answer. I might have missed one. Anybody else? I'm going to put the link one more time in the chat in case somebody didn't get it earlier. And then you can take a look. And then if something comes up and you have a question, then feel free to email me. My contact information is on slide 4 under World Language Resource Teacher.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome. Thanks for coming. Anyone else have anything? Okay, then. So thank you so much for coming. I'm going to close the Zoom now. And again, feel free to contact me via email at Walter Johnson. Good night.